So, we're talking about God space and what that is, how we create that, and how we go about having spiritual conversations, and how we can kind of develop those, have those come up in our everyday interactions naturally, which would be fantastic, right? If talking about God and Jesus and Christianity came up naturally, that'd make it a whole lot easier to share, right? Well, that's kind of the idea here, and that's kind of what we're getting at. And so in order to do that, I feel like the first question we really need to ask is, well, what is God space? And we didn't have time to get to this Wednesday, which is why I'm glad we're able to kind of put it in this little video here. And so I have 6 things picked here to kind of talk about to help define what God space is. And if you have the book, this is actually at the end of chapter 1, and he has even more than just these 6. These are just kind of 6 that I picked that I wanted to use to highlight, all right? So the very first one is this, okay? God space is where we come to the end of our own limited abilities and experience God's infinite power. And I think that's the biggest thing when it comes to God space and when it comes to trying to live out the Great Commission, is we have to understand and we have to realize that we have to step back and God has to take the front of the conversation of our lives. And I think really the less we try to kind of put into it and the less we try to force it ourselves, the more natural it's going to come up. And we wait for God to open those God space moments and God to use us in those moments. And so I think that's a really important one. The second one is this: seeds of faith are planted, watered, and nurtured. And I think obviously, goes without saying, it's a really important one, but one that's kind of there is where we kind of just plant the seed. God does all the work, right? We talked about that Wednesday, that we're not responsible for saving anyone because there's nothing, one, that we can do to do that. We don't have that power. Only God does. And 2, Jesus already died on the cross. Jesus has already saved people. Jesus already paid that price. So we don't have to do anything. We leave that up to God. The third thing is this: gentleness and respect are present, judgment is absent, and God-inspired conversation flows naturally because trust has been established. This is a big one. This is a huge one. If we don't have trust, if people feel judged, if it's not a gentle and respectful conversation, people aren't going to be interested in it. And that's where they shut us out, and that's where the door gets closed. And that's why it's so hard to have these conversations in the first place. It's because people have felt judged. People haven't had a relationship. There hasn't been trust established. And we'll talk about this coming Wednesday how we can sometimes establish that trust and build that relationship with people. But that is absolutely necessary in order to create God space, in order to truly be able to share God or Jesus with anybody. The fourth thing is this: friends of sinners, aka our friends, dwell. God space is where those people dwell. And friends of sinners, aka us, we're sinners, for all have sinned and fall short of the glory of God. So we're sinners. So friends of sinners, our friends, dwell there in God space. And when you really think about it, that encompasses everybody. And that's kind of the point. Everybody is in the space of God space. We have the potential to talk to anybody about God, about Jesus, about Christianity, if we're willing to look for the signs when God opens the doors. The fifth thing is this: cynics, skeptics, scoffers, and spiritually curious people can ask questions, share their doubts, voice their concerns, and even vent their anger towards God and the church. And again, I think this is a really big one. We all have doubts, even us Christians. Even me, a youth pastor, I have doubts sometimes. I have anger. I have frustration sometimes. And so we need to open up and offer a place where people can vent that, can express that. They can have their doubts. They can question things. They can be angry at us, at the church, at God, whatever they need to be angry at. Because here's the thing: if they don't have this relationship with God, odds are there's something that's happened that's broken that relationship. Something's happened in their life where they feel like God wasn't there. God didn't do what he said he was going to do. And so now I want nothing to do with them. So we have to be able to let them have those moments. Be angry, be upset. Because that's where the conversation, that's where things can really build. And Monday I'll share a story that really illustrates that point that I think will definitely make it really hit home for you guys. And the last thing is this: the unworthy feel safe enough to let the real self show. And unworthy is put in quotes because no one is unworthy, right? We talked about that with the prodigal son, not the Good Samaritan, the prodigal son. That Christians sometimes get this performance-based love of God's, right? That is based on how good we do and how much better we are than everyone else. But that's not it. It's actually a very Pharisee way of looking at it. But everyone's worthy. That's the point there. That's why it's put in quotes, because sometimes Christians see people as unworthy. Everyone's worthy. God came, Jesus said, the Son of Man came to seek and to save the lost, the sinners, the broken, the hurting, the unworthy, right? Anyway, and it's so where they can feel safe enough to reveal their true selves. And that's where true relationship, that's where true God space happens. And so God space is not something that's an easy thing to create sometimes. It's not an easy thing to find. But when it's there and when we find it and when it's been created, it's an absolutely amazing and powerful thing. And it's one of those things where you go, yeah, that was definitely God working in there. So here's your challenge for today. And I know this video got a little longer, but I wanted to hit this stuff that we didn't get to on Wednesday. So your challenge for today is to look at this list and to really think about what sticks out to you. What really resonates with you? What really hits with you and go, oh, that makes a lot of sense. Or, oh, that's a really good one. I didn't think about that, but that definitely needs to be there. So think about that. Write it down maybe. This is how we're going to start youth on Wednesday. We're going to start by talking about this slide here. So think about that. That's your challenge for the weekend. And have a great weekend. And I will have another video up by Monday. All right. See you guys later.